Hey.
Welcome again to Writing Your Way, where we'll be having some more fun discussion in our living room to share with you.
So we were going to do a second video on masks and glamours, and I didn't really have it nailed down. We tried it and it just didn't work. So we've changed our mind. We will get back to masks and glamours later when it's a more fully formed idea. Today we're going to talk about renting versus owning a house. Or as I like to say, long-term renting from the bank and government. Yeah. One of the things you see a lot, and you see people bitch about a lot, is the immigrant family that has our neighbors across the street. They have 17 cars that belong to that 4-bedroom house.
Yep.
According to Zillow, it's a 4-bedroom house. There are 17 adults coming in and out of that house on a daily basis, going to work, coming home from work. There are kids, there are teenagers. As near as I can tell, there's about 30 people living there in a 4-bedroom house, plus one very, very large RV in the backyard that's obviously lived out of.
And they're very well presented.
They're very well presented.
They obviously have good jobs, decent vehicles.
They hire a mariachi band about once every 3 months. It's
Which
awesome.
is the most amazing thing ever.
Okay.
When you have neighbors that have an actual mariachi band, that is
It's
ultimate
awesome.
civilization.
But you hear people complain about it. And why are you complaining? Then you have a lot of Southern African Americans who one family member will have the decent job and buy the house, and that house is always packed to the brim. There is a family per bedroom and extra bedrooms built into the living room, and they're maximizing their space.
No one goes homeless in that family.
No one goes homeless. It is why, I think it is why, if you look around, you don't see as many African American homeless people as you see white homeless people. You don't see as many Asian homeless people as you see white homeless people, because their community takes care of them. And because cops arrest them at a higher rate, so they're not on the street.
There is that.
That's home ownership, though. That's not really renting. When you buy a house, suddenly the plumbing is your responsibility. I have always liked garbage disposals. Garbage disposals are great. Scrape it all into the sink. It's gone!
It's a miracle of modern technology. It's one of those amazing things.
And if you live in an apartment complex, it's great.
Yep.
If you have a house, one of the first things you do is tape that thing so it can't get used and close that drain or put a screen across that drain, because it makes concrete in your pipes and plugs up your plumbing. Okay? If you talk to a plumber, you will find out that garbage disposals cause plumbing disasters. More so than putting bacon grease down the sink, because we all know to run hot water after bacon grease, right?
Wait, what?
Don't.
It lubricates your pipe so everything flows better.
No.
Just like your arteries.
No.
Okay.
Garbage disposals and putting coffee grounds down your sink are your number 1 and 2 reasons for major plumbing disasters in the kitchen. And we're not talking in the elbow drain. We're talking halfway to the street where you've got to get a plumber out and a roto-rooter out, and it takes work. Okay? So that convenience in an apartment isn't a convenience in a house. Another thing that comes up, actually let's go back to cultural still. The stereotype of the East Indies guy who comes to America on with a family visa and buys a franchise and works all of his family members at the franchise, and they all live in one house until they have enough money to buy another franchise and another house, and eventually they're all rich. It works.
It does.
Okay. It really does work. Having 27 people in a house the size of our house does work. We have too much stuff.
we can probably get half of a person in here.
We could get a half a person in here. If a friend had a crisis and needed a place, and we've done it before, yeah, we can move things around and make you a spot.
Things will happen. Their rent will go to the storage locker it's necessary to clear out their room.
And the rent will go to the storage locker, and your household chore will be dishes.
Mm-hmm.
We've done it in the past. But most people in Western white culture are adverse to living that crowded or to living under somebody else's roof. They expect, well, I'm paying rent, it's my house too. No, it's not your house too. If you're paying $400 a month and doing some dishes, that's not your house too. That's a client state. I'm giving you privileges, but it's not purchased. And people don't understand that. It's like in Tacoma with the house, one of the people that rented with us, their job was helping with the kitchen and a couple $100 a month. No, Lorianne, I'm not talking about you.
No.
I'm not. They couldn't do it. They wouldn't do enough kitchen work to justify, and every single month there was a reason why they didn't have the cash. And then they had the nerve to say something along the lines of, well, I'm renting my space, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, dude, our mortgage is $1,700 and our utilities come to $650.
Which went up another, like $200 with you moving in.
Yeah, if you were paying your share of 3 adults in the house, you'd be paying $1,200. Your rent is $250 and do the fucking dishes.
I remember his thing was, well, I didn't expect you to actually cook and use dishes.
Yeah, he agreed to help with the dishes, thinking that we were eating out a lot, and there wouldn't be that many dishes.
Doing freezer pizza or something.
Yeah, it's like, dude, just do the dishes. Do 1 load of dishes a day, and you'll stay caught up. Anyway, bitch. Most people in Western society that I have attempted to work with haven't been willing to work with. They went from their parents' house to their own apartment or a dorm situation, roommate situation where everybody's an equal. And they don't understand that home ownership is a lot more expensive. And even right now with the great rent push, most places the rent is less than the mortgage and utilities. Anyway, cultural perspective. If you want to save money, buying is the way to do it. If you want to live easier, renting is the way to do it. And that's something people don't see. If you own a house, the house becomes your hobby.
Everything.
Why? Because the leaves are falling and the gutters have to get stripped every single weekend, if not twice a week. That's 2 hours.
The maintenance department doesn't come by and take care of that for you.
Maintenance at the apartment doesn't cut the grass. Maintenance at the apartment doesn't grab all that garbage that blew into the yard with the windstorm. Maintenance at the apartment doesn't come by and take care of the kitchen drain that's having problems. Grr. There is no maintenance, it's you. And everything's an added expense. In a perfect world, you buy a brand new house and you have 10 years before you have problems.
In the perfect world, you keep moving every 10 years into a new house.
Most people move every 4
years.
years.
Yeah.
Most homeowners move every 4 to 5 years. I don't want to move.
We got a nice place. It's well located.
I'm going to knock on wood at that point.
Yeah, we're going to have some cardboard on that too.
Yeah, that's the paradigm model. The either or, I don't know if there's an either or.
It's more like an and or, like a computer logic problem.
Okay, there is an either or. So this house is solid. It's just a beautiful, solid house.
Mm-hmm.
The roof is only a couple years old. The furnace is only a couple years old. Yes, it's got some plumbing problems. We're working through them.
Yep.
It's a beautiful, solid house. Our house in Tacoma
Not so much.
had a broken foundation, slid on its foundation, had a broken roof, dropped below grade, so the plumbing was questionable on a good day. It was a money pit. That's what it was. After a certain point, the financial advisor says, you know, you really just need to give that back to the bank and walk away. So we do. Living in apartments.
It's called, excuse me.
Go ahead.
It's called deed in lieu, not foreclosure. So it's actually
Deed
a
in
legal
lieu
transfer.
of foreclosure. Some loans don't allow you to do it. Okay? A VA loan, you can't deed
Nope.
in lieu. But the other thing with that loan gets to voting, and we'll get back to that, because every time they pass a bond that adds a tax, it's a property tax. Okay, we'll get back to that. Moving in. When you have an apartment, you know you're going to move out. Hi. Don't worry about it. When you have an apartment, you know you're going to move out. You know you're not going to be there for very long. If you have a 2-year lease option, sign the 2-year lease option. If you're in one of the states that allows a 5-year lease option, sign the 5-year lease option. You can break a lease. There are legal ways to break a lease, but the lease guarantees they're not going to raise your rent or kick you out. It gives you more rights than it gives them.
And in return, they get the knowledge of not having to worry about getting another tenant into an empty,
they get stability.
Slot. They get stability.
The other reason is, in almost every state, you don't have to pay for paint and carpet if you're there for more than 2.5 years. If you're there for 2 years, most states will hit you with paint and carpet, and some states allow it every year. But if you move in and then you move out 2.5 years later or 3 years later, they can't charge you for carpet cleaning. It saves your deposit. Get as long a lease as you can. In a house, when you move in, it's actually harder, because I know that once I figure out where that painting is going, it's going to sit there for the next 20 years. So I want that painting to go in the exact right spot. So it sits on the floor beside that spot, gets moved around a couple of times, and it can take a year or two to figure out where something's going. Same with bookcases. The cookbooks originally were on the other wall, but I have to go past his chair, which he tends to make a nest around, to get to the cookbook. It didn't work. The cookbooks need to be where I can get to them and where there's enough light to see them. Okay, that's moving in. Letting go. You do tend to vet your stuff more when you live in an apartment. Once you have a house, you do tend to just stick it in a corner instead of getting rid of it. That is an issue.
Things can be unused for a longer period of time because you don't have to worry about it as much, but that creates its own problem over time.
It creates a really big problem over time.
Ask us how we know. Or better yet, don't.
Don't. Decolonizing, like going plastic free or zero waste. Living in a house is inherently privileged, inherently colonized.
Yes.
One of the things, political things I say, is that every time the Democrats get in office, they try to get people into houses. And every time the Republicans get into office, they crash the economy and people lose their houses. This is a cycle that's been going on my whole life. The reason Democrats like people in houses is people with mortgages don't riot.
Yeah.
People with mortgages don't go to the protests. You can't risk your house. People with mortgages are less likely to commit crimes because RICO Act can take your house. When your child commits a crime and you get threatened with losing your house, it's kind of an eye-opener.
Civil forfeiture.
Civil forfeiture. #1 financial trick of most of the government. Anyway. Going back, the house in Tacoma, when we moved in, the mortgage was $1,325. The very first year we were there, they passed a bond for some libraries that added $240 a month to our taxes. This is why homeowners vote against a large number of things that would benefit libraries and schools and stuff like that. $240 a month extra. And a year later, they closed the libraries anyway and shifted the money someplace else. So right now, Oregon's got one coming up that looks like a good idea. It's a tax, paid for by a tax, that guarantees all Oregonians medical care. It looks good on paper.
Yes, to amend the state constitution to give a right to affordable medical care.
Paid for by taxes. But if you read the whole thing, halfway through you find out they have no actual plan. The money that they will be collecting by taxes will go into the general fund until such time as they determine how they're going to process this. And it cannot affect the school or something else budget.
Right.
Do you remember what the other budget was?
Not offhand.
There's two budgets it can't affect. Schools and something
We do not
else.
have the voter pamphlet in front of us. This is
I don't have the voter pamphlet.
From memory from 2 weeks ago when we voted.
So they're going to raise the tax, not budget the tax towards medical care. They can't impact the school budgets and some other budget. Transportation.
I'm not sure.
Anyway, and eventually the courts will order how they're going to enforce this. But you're going to be taking the tax out from the start. So it's just basically a tax raise.
And there's no definition of what affordable health care is.
And there's no definition of what affordable health care is.
What is affordable? We don't know.
As a homeowner, not voting for that. Not voting for that. If you told me we're taking this tax and this tax is going to go into a pool for health care for those people who are not covered, blah, 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 then I would agree. But then I look at how much the tax is, and the tax accounts to $75 a month that we would be paying more on our mortgage because your taxes come out of your mortgage or come out with your mortgage. Anyway, when you live in an apartment and you get into an argument with your neighbors, different subject, you get into an argument with your neighbors, they're going to move, or you're going to move.
Somebody's moving.
Somebody's moving eventually.
Somebody might be forced to move.
Okay. I have so many friends that I'll see them online talking about getting into a fight with their neighbor. And it's like, why? They know where you live. First rule. I mean, you're breaking it.
When you own, you don't do that.
When you own, don't get into fights with your neighbors. I don't care if they're assholes. Don't get into fights with your neighbors because they ain't moving. And you ain't moving. And they know where you live. Yeah, you know where they live too. But find ways to work around it. We have one set of neighbors that is just not in our life plan. Not, how do I say it?
I just say they don't mesh with our view on the world
at all.
Which is okay.
Okay. There are plenty of people who have different politics than me that I can stand there and go, There are people who have different politics than me that I can go, I'm going to tap out at that point and walk away. And then there's these people. And it's kind of like, wow, you're kind of special.
And then we have neighbors that are like really cool and share much of our aesthetic.
Yeah, yeah. Then we have neighbors that are cool that share our aesthetic. Don't engage with the neighbors you know you're not going to like. If you can see at a glance that they're not your kind of people, don't engage with them.
There's no reason to give yourself a negative situation when you own.
Yeah. And don't put things in their face. Yeah. Don't put things in their face, and they won't put things in your face, hopefully. Which is, street signs or politician signs and stuff like that.
The classic live and let live.
Yeah, that's not what I mean, but it's really not.
That's my interjection to make... to derail the conversation a little bit, I suppose.
Yeah,
You might notice I do this on occasion, and I apologize for that. But
nah, there's no reason to apologize. He apologizes for everything.
I know. That's part of my Live and Let Live program.
30 years ago, a friend of ours had a parakeety parrot thing.
Uh-oh.
And she was complaining that they couldn't teach the parrot how to say anything. And the parrot talked really, really fast because they weren't teaching it to slow down. Because you have to teach parrots to talk slow. Because the parrot brain is going so fast that when it's talking, it's... and we can't hear it. But the parrot can hear it. And it was about a year when I realized that, one, the parrot is singing the Tetris song constantly. I can hear it.
It was all the music
from
Tetris.
Too fast for them to catch what it was. And the other thing was, because of him, the parrot was saying, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. It was much, much faster than that.
I'm sorry.
And it's just like, I went around for like a year going, I'm sorry! And he'd give me a dirty look. It's like, because it's a blurt out. It's a pattern that they picked up in childhood. I should explain this. Okay. Hi, my name is Charisse. I go by Shy mostly. My pronouns are they, them. We're just going to leave that at that. This is Michael, also known as Alexander, depending on where you've met them from, and they don't use pronouns.
I just ignore them for the most part. Use my name. That's cool. Hey, you. That's awesome.
Okay? So I slip up with pronouns because my brain is programmed to pronouns. Their brain is not programmed to pronouns. Their languages from childhood don't include pronouns.
Or respond to pretty much everything. I don't take it badly.
Yeah.
So all is cool.
Yeah. So that's that, because I keep messing up and
Sorry.
Hi. Yeah.
I have amateur nouns. See, I can still do it.
One of the things they like to do is make me laugh. When we were younger, we used to spar martial arts, and I'd win. And they realized at some point that if they could make me laugh, I'd lose my focus, and then they'd win. So they'd start doing Three Stooges or whatever, and I'd start laughing. So in these videos, they realized that not only can they interrupt, but they can blurt out what they realize I'm about ready to say, and then I have to say it again afterwards, and it looks like I took it from them, and they know what just happened. But also they can get me laughing, and then they have the
Yeah, really the only reason I'm doing this today is to illustrate a point that I have issues, and I force my issues on others, and this is why I say I'm sorry all the time, because it happens. So now it's been properly illustrated, and I can withdraw from that.
Yes, you can. Anyway, going back to renting versus owning and politics. We had 2 politicians leave flyers on the door. They were politicians we were actually going to vote for anyway. But they didn't knock. They just left flyers on the door, which is kind of annoying, which means they paid a canvasser, and the canvasser, for both of them, because they're the same party, just left flyers on the door, because our neighborhood is not the neighborhood that politician should be expecting votes from. Is that clear?
That's about right. That makes sense to me.
Okay. They didn't want a confrontation, so they didn't knock, which is stupid of them. But anyway. I'm losing my train of thought.
Yeah, the issue with that one is basically if you're not actually going to address the people that you want to get votes from, you're not willing to take the time to say, hello, this is me, or this is who I'm representing. Yeah. And I just want to let you know about these policies on this and why we think this is an important and viable thing for you to support in this particular race.
But with the polarization of politics, I can understand why somebody wouldn't want to knock on the door this year.
It could easily be a personal safety issue these current times.
Our neighborhood is unincorporated. Salem. It's not technically in Salem city limits. Our taxes are property taxes are significantly cheaper because we're a block and a half over. We are in an mid-income Hispanic neighborhood. And by Hispanic, I don't mean Spanish Hispanic. I mean Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, tamales, elote, street vendors. It's awesome.
We love it.
We love it. But politicians-wise, we had 2 people knock. In Tacoma, I never once had a knock in Tacoma living on the res. Never once had anybody. They may have come to the res to invitationals or something. Never once came down my street.
We're pretty much considered the res as non-voters. Well,
yeah.
But, they might get votes if they address some of the issues.
Yeah. I'm of the opinion that Tacoma's a lost cause.
Here's some nice blankets.
Yeah. So, living in Federal Way, in an apartment complex, in 2 different apartment complexes, every single election I had people knock on the door. Because they were white middle-class apartment complexes, in their opinion. Living in Pennsylvania, never once met a politician. Living in Everett, never once met a politician.
No.
So, living in Federal Way, we did, though, a couple of times. Living in Olympia back in the day, knew multiple politicians, had dinner with them regularly. thought that that was going to be a career choice.
And some of them are still around.
Some of them are. One of them just died recently. Anyway, owning versus renting. The main differences in owning versus renting is a feeling of stability. Yeah. I like renting from the point of view of if you don't like it, you can leave. When you go to own, you should be damn certain that's the town and the area you want to live. Because you get here and you really need to know that before you move in. We moved in blind. We lucked out.
That's for sure.
Really lucked out. But we liked the house.
And you were very happy where we are. Love the neighborhood.
Love the neighborhood. We are walking distance to a Target, to a very small mall, to... Is there a Joann's over there?
There's a number of things over there.
Yeah.
But it's pretty much we're within a quick walk to any of the major type of strip commercial businesses you'd find in any other town in the United States. Yeah. And all the type of other support restaurants and whatnot that you normally see.
Yeah.
Close to medical.
Close to medical, walking distance to a Dick's Sporting Goods. It's a nice little neighborhood.
Neighborhood garage.
Neighborhood garage that took care of the car, or the truck, Jeep, whatever it is. Yeah. In an apartment. Benefits of an apartment. Laundromat, if that's a benefit.
Maintenance. You don't have to worry about maintenance issues because they should have maintenance on staff or on contract to fix anything.
You don't have to go out and get the weeds out of the gutter, and your rent doesn't go up when a bill passes, when an initiative passes.
When you renew your lease, that's another story.
Yeah, that's a completely different story. And when they refuse to tell you how much your lease is going to be until the very last minute, and then act surprised that you moved.
We didn't have to move. There'd be a lease. You never stated.
It said you can raise my rent by as much as 30%, and you never told me how much. Well, we only raised it like $50, but you didn't say that.
No.
You know, there's that. Culturally, though, if you want to get ahead in life, roommates are the way to go. Sub-renting is the way to go. I personally do not believe in collecting rent from somebody in excess of what you need. So, like, the two of us are going to live here whether or not there's a roommate. Therefore, I don't want to charge the roommate a third.
Exactly.
Because that's not realistic to me. I want help with the housework because I'm failing. I want organizational help because I'm failing. I want somebody to hang out with and do art with because it's fun. I want somebody to hang out and do art with them because it's fun.
Exactly.
I want somebody who plays music occasionally, but not repetitiously.
That's why I have a Ranger cabin in the back.
We've talked about the music, right? Have we talked about the music?
That'll be a separate video, I think.
That'll be a separate video. I think we talked about it once. There's types of music I like and there's types of music I don't. We're both neurodivergent, which means that what annoys me is not necessarily what annoys them. And they like finding buttons and touching them. So if they figure out something annoys you, they're going to touch it.
It's not...
They're going to touch it. And they're going to touch it. And they're going to touch it.
On one hand, that's what buttons are for. On the other hand, it's not really intentional.
Yes, it is. Anyway, I think we've probably talked enough. We covered all the points. I was going to go over polls a little bit because somebody made a comment on my Facebook about a poll, and it occurred to me that a lot of people don't know how polls actually work, and this is something that I write with in my writing. So when you see polls, okay, first of all, they have no value. They are not designed for you or me. Polls are designed to see how a specific subset of people responds to a specific question so that that politician can either use that question in the campaign trail or not use that question.
It's a stimulus response loop.
Okay, so media will report so-and-so's polling down or so-and-so's polling up. No, they're not. They're really, really not. Because the question was not, are you going to vote for candidate A or are you going to vote for candidate B? The question was, do you think candidate A is experienced enough to project their victory? Or psychobabble bullshit, okay? They're using words that have value and then they calculate the value of the sentence.
It's all very mathematical.
Yes, dear. That's what value is. The other thing with the poll is that some polls slant to the conservative and some polls slant to the liberal. So when you see a poll and it says 36% plus or minus 3, the standard belief out there is that that's plus or minus 36% plus or minus 3. So that's a spread of 33 to 39. But it's not. If the poll slants to the candidate, then it's plus or minus 3 from that number, yes. But the other candidate, the poll slants against, which means they could be up as much as 6 points. It only goes to this side. And that plus or minus 3 shows you what the slant is against the other candidate. Not both candidates are plus or minus 3. Because they're not both candidates plus or minus 3. If it says plus or minus 3, then one candidate is plus or minus 3, and the other candidate is either -6 or +6. So now you see that the spread, if this guy is +3, and this guy is +6, or excuse me, it would be -6. So instead of 36, he's 39, and instead of 35, he's 29. Okay? It's a huge difference the way it works. It winds up, plus or minus 3 means a 12-point difference is potential. Mm-hmm. Okay? Or a dead heat is potential. Plus or minus 3 means this one could be 3 points above or 12 points down. Does that make sense? Okay. The other thing with polls, 90% of the political polls today are still on landlines. I just want you to think about that. Who has a landline? We don't have a landline.
Older people tend to have a landline. We don't. We're on that cusp.
Okay. Who has a landline? The polls that are going to cell phones are polls that are self-administered, which means you go to the site and take the poll. You contact them and take the poll. You see a little thing, hey, what do you think about this? And you click the link and take the poll. You're self-initiating. Who self-initiates? Okay, so phone polls slant to the conservative 90% of the time. Mm-hmm. And online polls and phone polls slant to the liberal 90% of the time. So you have to look at what kind of poll that is. Then you have to look at how many respondents in what area. What was the filters? Because most of these polls have filters. Do you have a job? No. Okay, sorry, you're not on our poll. Do you make $54,000 a year? No. Sorry, you're not on our poll.
Of course, you don't know this at the time. You're taking the poll. Those are just the questions they ask.
Those are just questions within the poll. You don't know. But they're taking people out of the poll. Okay? Do you have a college education? Or some college? We don't want that. We don't want to call it college education. Or we do want a college education. That's how they slant the polls. A good pollster with 12 questions can figure out your IQ, your income, how long you've had your job, and what your education is. And usually what region, socio-region of the United States you come from with 12 questions. And then they add in that 13th question somewhere in there, which is the actual question of the poll. Okay? But the majority of polls out there are landline. You can go to realclearpolls.com and they'll show you the big polls. And you can do your state, you can do your governor, you can do your senator, you can do general election. They'll show you where things are trending. Okay? Trending is what you want to know with polls. Because trending is a composite of the last 5 polls from different sources. Because this poll slants conservative, this poll slants liberal, now we know that you're right about here. Mm-hmm. Okay, so this person is ahead. Okay. There's also 531, 521, whatever that site is that I can't remember the name of right now because dyslexia, is a polling site that keeps track of polls. The neat thing about it is if you scroll to the bottom and you search around a little bit, you can find the source information on all the polls. If you're really, really interested, ask me another time and I'll look it up on this phone right here because I have a link to it because I go to it daily. But it'll tell you this poll was 37 people on a college campus.
So what type of sample is that?
What type of sample is that? Did you only ask students or did you only ask professors? This poll is 5,344 people in Iowa. Rural.
That's a bigger sample size.
But it's exclusively conservative.
Mm-hmm.
And it shows you where the polls are coming from. It also tells you this poll is not credible because they have been cited 17 times for violations. Or this poll is not credible because they're paid for by this politician.
Was it the Real Clear polls that gives the rating on the...
No, that's it's 531 or 532 or 571 or 5 something.
I really enjoyed that one. That was pretty impressive, showing how it rated the accuracy and validity.
It rates the accuracy of the poll and tells you which direction they slant. This polling company slants 6% or 6 points to the Democrat. This polling company slants 18 points to the Republican. Okay? And they'll tell you that. A lot of these polls will slant as much as 34 points to the Republican. A lot of the main name brand polls that you see out there. The other thing you find out is that this ABC poll is actually a Washington Post poll, but it was done by this college over here, and it's just...
By their little fringe political department.
Fringe political department. Or you'll find out... Okay, this is a good one. So, and I don't want to use the slur, but I'm going to use it anyway because most people know the slur. If I say the Universalist Church, you just kind of like, oh, okay. Moonies. Do y'all know what Moonies are? Okay. Moonies, the Universalist Church, Reverend Sung Moon founded a church in the 70s. And the concept of the church was racial integration through marriage for equality. That humanity was not going to feel equal until everybody was mixed race. That's the primary. It's a Christian adjacent cult. It believes that Reverend Sung Moon was called by Jesus to be the next Jesus, the next Savior, and that his second wife is the virgin birth. All of her kids are virgin birth. All of her kids, all 7 of her kids are virgin birth and free of original sin, which makes room for he died a while back and the kids now run the company, except for the ones that left. I call it a company because it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Okay, the Universalist Church and businesses adjacent is like $500 billion industry. There's only a couple million members, like 20 million members. It's very popular in Japan, of all places. It's very popular in the US. One of the things they do is the giant Moonie weddings. The giant Moonie weddings are really, really cool. Reverend Sung Moon believed that romantic love is a sin. It's evil. It is the height of human downfall. That you should not have romantic love. A marriage should be a business. And that pregnancy should be planned, and that sex is a distraction.
They should be
teach their
distracting.
own. Teach their own. Okay. So they bring in people from other countries and marry them to people who are U.S. citizens, getting them U.S. citizenship. And they do the same thing in England, and they do the same thing in every other Western country. That is the purpose of the church. Okay, so far so good, right? But remember I said it's a $500 billion industry. They have 2 businesses, 2 primary businesses. The first primary business, well, technically 3. The first primary business is seafood. If you eat at a Korean-run sushi place, it's 90% likely they are members of the Universalist Church. 90 to 95%. They have the monopoly on non-Japanese sushi in America. Okay. I'm happy for this. I really like sushi, and I'm really glad that they invented conveyor belt sushi, and there are all these little sushi places and teriyaki places. I'm okay with this. Their second business is owning small newspapers. And they slant their politics. And they are hardcore right-wings. When you see the church with the blessings of the AK-47, that's a Universalist church.
Oh.
They're part of the Heritage Foundation. They are a huge driving force behind American conservative religious politics. Huge driving force. And nobody knows it because Universalist Church, that could be anything. Anything. And it could say Universalist Baptist Church. It could say Universalist Catholic Church. It could say anything after Universalist Church. Okay, what?
Unification Church.
Yeah.
Unification Church.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's an entire industry. And their third business is churches. They seed and open churches in small neighborhoods. And I'm not talking, this is for the Koreans. They make mainstream, normal presenting churches. There's a huge number of members in the Beaverton Tea Guard area outside of Portland because of the IT jobs. They have 25,000 members in one church. The building itself only seats 6,000. But they have 25,000 registered members because they believe that marriage is a business and church is a business. And they're pushing that conservative thing, that sex is evil, that abortion is evil, that women should be modest and quiet around their husband. They're pushing all of that. And one of their primary businesses is small newspapers. They own one of the larger newspapers, and I don't remember which one it is, Washington or New York. Or
I don't remember which.
It's not Washington Post because that's Bezos. It's the other one.
Washington Times.
Washington Times. Yes. And they run political polls through their newspapers, and that's a major income for them. And they're polling their own members, okay, because they have their phone bank. So they offer, we're going to poll 50,000 people in the United States, across the United States, in diverse neighborhoods, and we'll get you your responses. It's going to slant conservative Christian, because that's the basis of their cult. Never mind that they think that Reverend Sung was the next Messiah, and that his wife was a virgin for all 7 births, and that his son is free of the original sin, and his daughter is free of the original sin. Never mind the discrepancies. But one of their 2 big things is they do the blessing of the AK-47 because they believe that the AK-47 is called of God. It is the weapon of judgment. And they do the mass marriages. And that's an example on polling where if you go looking and you find one of their businesses involved, you know they only polled their people. And it's a problem. And when I found out that they were a huge contributor to the Heritage Foundation is the think tank that Clarence Thomas belongs to, and any Republican in high office.
The Heritage Foundation was responsible for many of the more recent Supreme Court picks under the Trump administration.
Yeah. Bill Barr was part of the Heritage Foundation, may still be, but most of the Supreme Court justices are part of the Heritage Foundation. And this is where you're getting people who are so close to being flat earthers in high office. It's not even funny. Because once you accept one big lie that Reverend Sung is the Messiah and his wife had 7 virgin births, once you believe that, it's easier to believe the next big lie and the next big lie. And once you believe that everything is transactional and everything is business, it's easier to turn everything into a business transaction. And your polls reflect that.
And that's its own rabbit hole.
And that's its own rabbit hole. So now we've covered 2 topics in one video. I have no idea how I'm going to write this at the top.
But we'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. Anyway, yeah, that's something to watch for when you're reading a poll. Understand the poll was never designed for for the news to report it. The poll was designed for the politician to get a talking point and to see how that talking point plays off of their base.
And they can throw out the poll opinions that they don't want to share based on the screening questions at the beginning of a poll.
They can do a poll and find out that 85% of the people can't stand them. But 70% of the people like this one talking point. So they'll just hit that talking point constantly and not tell you that people don't like them. Okay?
70% of people agree with this stand from this candidate.
Yeah.
But, you know, they're not going to state that they don't like that candidate.
Yeah. Anyway, and people lie to polls. That's the other thing to remember. People lie to polls all the time.
Exit polls are probably the best example of that. How many exit polls say candidate A is going to win this election, and then guess what? They don't, because nobody in the exit poll wanted to give their real vote.
In 1972, I think it was, early 70s, ABC had a black reporter who was doing an exit poll in a predominantly white neighborhood. Did you vote for candidate A or candidate B? And every single person said that they voted for the liberal candidate because they thought that's what he wanted to hear. The conservative candidate won by a landslide. And these days they'll say 34 to 35. It's a landslide. No, it's not. It's not. It's not. A landslide is 65 to 35.
That's a landslide.
Okay?
1%.
1% is not a landslide.
That's barely a sediment shift.
Barely. Actually, one other thing I wanted to address. Okay, all of the gaslighting when you're young. This makes sense. When you're young, you get told things like, when you're older, you'll understand. When you're older, you'll become more conservative. Those kind of things that are just gaslighting, okay? They're just trying to mentally program you. One of the things that used to get harped a lot, and still does, is if you don't vote, you can't complain.
Ah, yes, this one.
Okay? Not voting is expressing an opinion. It's a vote of no confidence for the candidates offered. And when the United States regularly has 60% of the population not voting, it's a vote of non-confidence for the whole frickin' process.
An educated non-vote is a vote.
It's a vote. Okay? It's a I abstain. So to say you can't complain is gaslighting.
Because you are complaining
via
your
You're complaining by not voting. Now, lazy not voting or indifferent not voting, yeah, shut the fuck up and go away.
That's a different story.
Okay? But you can tell when somebody didn't vote deliberately versus when, oh, there was an election? How could you miss that there was an election? Okay, they know there's an election. Anyway, that's it. We'll see how this goes. I play these back and listen to them and make sure that they're okay, because every third or fourth video, it's like, whoa, wow, that was bad.
Sometimes things don't work.
And then I make them listen to it, and it's like, what do you think? Oh, wow, no. So that happens. Yeah. Anyway. Anything else?
That's it. I want to thank you for coming along again today to join us.
I want it known that he has a speck of dirt on the top of his nose that has been driving me nuts. His lung. Yeah, that's your lung.
No,
on the top of his nose.
On my nose lung.
That's been driving me nuts this whole time because I want to reach over and clean it off, but I haven't. So
excellent self-restraint.
Yeah. Talk to you later.